The future of work is touching organizations of all shapes and sizes, and nobody knows this better than Wagner Denuzzo, our next one-on-one. I'm excited to spend some time talking with Wagner. He's the head of capabilities for future of work at Prudential Financial. He's born and raised in Brazil. He's got a ton of expertise in executive and leadership development and a special focus on developing high-performing teams and what we'll call transformational leadership. He's also in his role leading the future of work strategy and capabilities for Prudential. Please welcome Wagner Denuzzo.
So I'm excited for this next session. I'm joined with Wagner Denuzzo. He's the head of capabilities for future of work at Prudential Financial. So Wagner, welcome. And I'm excited to talk to you a little bit today.
Thank you very much, Sam.
So as you know, we've talked several times about this concept of future of work, particularly around how it impacts not just the desk-based worker, but full workforce. Before we lead into that, Wagner, I'd love to get, your title is very interesting and not one we come along much, but obviously the fact that future of work is in your title, I feel like you got to kick us off with a definition of what future of work is from your seat.
I'll be glad to do it. If you think about 3 years ago, future of work didn't exist practically. We are talking about advancing cognitive capabilities, AI, and all that. But future of work as a concept emerged from the need to think about how we are going to reinvent the work, how we are going to reinvent what it means to be unemployed, and how we are going to reinvent the workplace. And funny enough, now everywhere you go, when you think about talent, when you think about learning, development, you hear inevitably somebody's going to bring up the future of work. So to me, future of work is reinventing the future of what we do every day, which is work. How do we work? Where do we work? And who are the people who come together to do the work? And if we do this right, the knowledge, the people, the processes, they all come together as future of work. So future of work is transforming how we create value for our customers and clients as an organization. That's the way I would position it.
And so many people, when they hear future of work, I feel at times we get overwhelmed with the news cycles focus on robots and automation and technology that oftentimes is positioned as potentially taking more than it's giving. What are your thoughts on that?
I have a different opportunity here. For me, I'm very optimistic, first of all. And you need people who can see the future as better than the present. I think I'm one of those leaders. I think RPA, of course, we need to maximize efficiencies. We have been doing this for the history of industrialized world. But what we are here now is rethinking how do we create value and differentiate organizations. So of course, we need to automate some processes that don't need to be done by a person. But when you think about differentiating your organization, inevitably you're going to figure it out that technology is going to be leveraged by everyone. What's going to differentiate your organization is going to be the people who use technology on a day-to-day basis to complement each other and create even a greater value than RPA or the traditional workplace would create. So I think to me is technology is advancing our ability to reinvent how we do the work and how people start using critical thinking, using what we call the human capabilities that are inherited in this work to maximize the efficiencies that you bring through technology. So I think for me, it's always a complement. One complements the other. And when you think about my job didn't exist 3 years ago, the same when you apply technology. In 3 years, there will be a ton of new titles that we never envisioned today. So I'm very optimistic about this.
Sure. For the companies, Wagner, that are maybe more mid-size or on the smaller end that are focusing on how do they implement a future of work strategy or even where to begin, what recommendations do you have for C-level leaders as they look at their budgets, especially now in a post-COVID world that have been definitely impacted. Where do you tell them to start?
Well, the first thing is to get your leadership teams together to really think if you are positioned to have tolerance for change. Because people minimize the expectations here, but leaders need to expect a lot of change and it's disruption, and it's very hard to lead through disruptions when the economy is not very positive. When things are happening around you, you just want to maximize your efficiencies in your operational excellence. What I would say for the mid-sized companies, for example, use partnerships. It's incredibly important for us now to be really good at workforce planning and understanding the organizational capability I'm building is better leveraged through partnerships, or should I build in-house, or should I buy and bring and grow my staff exponentially? I think for the mid-sized company, the question is, are we willing to go through that dark space where we don't know the destination is there? We all hope that the destination is better than where you started from, but you need this leap of faith. And it's very hard because, as I say, leaders need courage, they need compassion for their people, but they also need to be very curious. If you're not curious, it's going to be hard for you to take that new step.
Yeah, that's a great point around, being open to change. And you said curious, which I think is great. What do you have to? Do you think organizations have? What's your perspective on what has to change within the org structure in order to position for the type of change you're talking about? And I only bring that up from personal experience, where in so many organizations that have a human resource function, sometimes that group isn't incentivized or motivated to necessarily be the most forward-looking or most open to change. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, thank you. I like that you're asking these questions because the age of transparency is here. Authenticity is here. So when you start thinking about what we are talking about is really creating reality-based, data-based decision-making processes that allow the organization to move forward with the speed. HR traditionally has not been asked to play that role. But now today, if you think about it, HR is critical for the business. It is HR that's bringing technology, at least at Prudential. We brought the artificial intelligence not to eliminate jobs, actually to augment our intelligence so we can help the business transform. It's very different value proposition. But then again, when you think about HR and like everyone across the organization, what I would say to you, what's needed here is the humility to learn. Leaders as learners. All of us have to really approach the future as learners. If we don't have the capacity to accept that we don't know enough, and that's okay, it's very hard to move from checking the boxes and managing to an organization, to your point, what is needed. We need an organization where decision making is fluid, where organizations make decisions at all levels of their hierarchy without having this really difficult process-oriented decision-making, which only hinders and slows down everything. So it's very hard to do all this at once because you do need to deliver on a quarterly basis. You do need to deliver to stakeholders that are asking you how you're going to manage the operational excellence that you're committed to. So it's not easy. So what I would say is what we need is empathy. We need empathy towards each other so we don't feel that we are letting people down by pressuring them to do things that they don't know how to do. So we need to apply empathy because we're all trying to do the right thing, HR included. HR is here to help us be successful and have an organization where the workplace is safe enough for employees to really want to stay there. Because nowadays, actually, we have the gig economy. We have so many opportunities for people. Now, with COVID, of course, opportunities are limited. But let's not just rely on the lack of opportunity right now, because employers will see that employees will define who they work for as soon as this pandemic is over. People are going to walk with their feet, right? They're gonna talk with their feet. So we need to be very careful how we organize ourselves to allow this new workplace to come to fruition, not only because of us, not only because of the competition profitability of your organization, but because the workforce of the future is cross-generational and they have needs that I think we might not be anticipating. So it's very complicated, but the major point here, empathy towards everyone because we are trying to do a right thing. Secondly, the idea that decision making has to happen across the teams. You can no longer wait for decision making to go up and down.
Yeah, I would agree. The speed at which would you say that the speed at which work is changing has been accelerated in the last few months? Do you feel like things have been new? Do you think this is a trend that was already we were on the path towards?
You know what's funny? I tell you what is my personal opinion. What's funny is that we're all accelerating our strategy, let's call it that way, business strategy towards a fast environment, better, bolder. But what the pandemic did is to slow us down to think about our workforce more carefully, to really take care of ourselves first. And that was very positive because I think we're creating different consciousness. Leaders now are very committed to empathically deal with what happens outside the walls of their organizations. So now it's personal. I was just telling somebody intimacy is creating high performance. If you think about it, it's the intimacy that we are creating with our employees and our leaders that's enhancing our commitment to high performance. And that's different. Now, of course, right after this pandemic, it started to become a day-to-day occurrence because now we've been in it for months. Now you can see the acceleration is becoming exponential again. Now people are trying to figure out how to reinvent themselves, reinvent the workplace, bring people back, which is never back. We will never be back to what it was. So now I see that there is a lot of energy to move ahead with the speed, which is creating a lot of challenge, of course, for those who have kids, who don't have schools, you know how it goes. But I see exponentially that everyone across the industries, not only my company, is across the industry, across all the workforces, you can see that people are working harder. They're working more hours. I think it's just a symptom of how difficult it is to be competitive in this environment. You know?
Sure. How do you respond to this statement? If I were to say that the future of work, whether it's the strategies or the systems or the technologies that emerge from it, the future of work is going to affect different corners of our workforce differently, specifically low-income frontline workers. What are your thoughts on that?
The reality is the reality. Now it's becoming apparent. Going back to transparency, now we have data. Now the numbers can lie. First of all, diversity of our workplace. We need to increase the diversity of our workforce. Why? Because we owe it to all communities to give opportunities to everyone. So underserved communities right now are being hit much harder by the COVID-19 pandemic. They're being adversely impacted by all this. So what we need to pay attention is that these are consumers of the future. These are the consumer, our clients, our customers. You know, I think every company has this idea that they're going to grow their market share. How do you do that? You do that by creating a just economy. When the economy allows people to be part of the whole environment, every company benefits from it. So what I'm trying to say is that, yes, we see that some underserved communities are being impacted much harder than others, but it's up to organizations now to step up the efforts to give access. For example, at Prudential, we just did workshops for nonprofit organizations to really help these underserved people who have no college degree sometimes, to give them access to internships, to give them access to employment. We are trying to create the enablement that allows these people who have not participated in the economy to be part of the economy. So, of course, I agree with you. The reality is harsh. People are losing jobs at a higher rate in communities that are underserved. You can see that some communities are having a hard time getting back to work, especially in a service environment that we have. But I believe it's up to every organization to do their best. We are trying really hard. And again, I'm optimistic about this because for the first time, we are really thinking twice about, do we really need the requirements to be so strict? Do we really need these people to have master's degrees, college degrees? Or they need to learn machine learning, they need AI, they need to interact with technology, or we just need their creativity. Sometimes it's just a matter of bringing the people who have the best attitude and the adaptability. Think about what's happening right now. People who have to adapt quickly will be the survivors of the future because we continuously are going to be confronted with, with information, new information that requires you to act fast and adapt. So adaptability becomes the key word here, and you don't need a college degree, 4-year college degree to be adaptable.
Yeah, totally. This is always my favorite time of year as a leader because our summer internships happen, and
Yes.
it's always one of my favorite times of year to get to work with sort of a new class of or a new cohort. My question to you, if you were giving advice to this wave of graduates coming out of the university or young people taking on an internship this summer, what do you tell them what's your advice to that group as they start to figure out how they navigate the start of their own career pathway?
That's interesting because I just talked to 2 groups last week, and I start by saying I do believe that you probably have plans for your careers. It's healthy to have plans for your careers, but please stay in the present. Stay in the present because you might be missing opportunities to learn and expand your knowledge and increase your experiences and all the skills that the future requires of you might not be on your destination journey. Pay attention to that because it's important to have plans for your career, but the plan that you should have is how can I possibly maximize my learning? That's what you have to focus on. How can I expand and broaden my experience? If you are in a profession, could you possibly have transferable skills to seek an opportunity in a different industry that gives you an incredible acceleration of your learning? And that way you build capability. And the future is going to require a lot of capabilities. If you're not ready, it's going to be difficult. So basically what I tell them is stay present, try to manage your anxiety just by stay present and being supported by each other, because now is a community environment that we need each other to survive. So it's healthy to have plans, it's healthy to be competitive, all of those things are great. Coming out of school, what you need is to learn emotional intelligence because you need to balance your emotional well-being with your achievement tendencies, because we all want to achieve something. But you need to manage and control the anxiety, the emotions that come up every day because things change continuously. And then I say to manage relationships, you need to be emotionally well because it will depend on your ability to influence others and connect with the others to collaborate. I think about radical collaboration nowadays. Companies can no longer have boundaries between functions and business units. You need to have cross collaboration. That's what I call radical collaboration. So students, the idea here is not to isolate and focus on how competitive you need to be. The idea here is to open your eyes to new opportunities and start collaborating, no matter where, no matter with whom, because the hierarchy of yesterday is going to be gone soon, and you're going to have to collaborate up and down and across. That's what I tell them.
It's great. It's one of those things that I've learned this even in some of the conversations we've had with some educators or even elected officials as we talk about the future of work. The job training or acquirement of new skills. These are things that no more can we just look at the classroom as the sole source for becoming prepared. We have to look at acquiring experiences, almost like, is there really a skill gap or is there an experience gap? I kind of wonder at times. So this has been great, Wagner. I'm asking everybody one final question as we wrap, and I'm excited to hear your response. And it's, what is your hope for the future of work?
Mhm. My hope is that all of us start paying attention to leadership as a key ingredient of our success. Because traditionally we think about leadership development for those who have executive roles or managerial roles. That's no longer the case. In an agile organization, you need to apply all your best leadership skills, and you yourself has an opportunity to really develop those skills. So it's up to all of us to seek and develop the skills that we're going to need to collaborate. So I think my hope is that leadership development becomes part of every day in everyone's lives, because that's what's going to be required.
Sure. That's great, Wagner. I love the humility to learn. It was one of the things I wrote down as you were talking. I think that there's a lot that a lot of organizations can take from that point. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sam. Take care.